you, Mufti and Shannon, and also to Arab too. So first of all, questions directly about the system.
So when you are tracking the eyes, did you consider eyeglasses that the students are wearing?
Well, right now, no, but there is something which definitely is a very valid point, and that is in consideration, because you know that well, the reflection, and a number of times students with a number of different conditions, they actually wear very heavy eyeglasses. So that is something which is in consideration, and that how can we actually identify the eyeglasses, or even in certain cases, but through image processing can remove the impact of the eyeglasses, the glasses and the reflection that you can see in the glasses to detect the pupil more accurately.
I understood your question differently. I thought you were saying, because there are the Toby glasses. Have you seen Toby glasses? So I wasn't sure if that's what you're talking about, whether you had another piece of assistive technology. You're just talking about people wearing glasses. Any other questions? Please.
I have two concerns about this. Just like that, you mentioned that your system send the message to the teacher after a certain time, but I'm suspecting some biasness in there. Like that, the student may be concerned for the first couple of minutes actually not engaging, but over time maybe they engaging or something like that. So if it is send the message to the teacher for the first few minutes, then it may be actually misleading to the message. So there is one problem in here. If you, how you actually making a decision that in this particular moments, or you can make a decision actually capturing the data. So that's the case. If you make a decision for your overall data, then you cannot actually make it real time, because teacher in the classroom that need the information at the real time, then you have to make some information after a couple of minutes. Definitely has some bias. Secondly,
Can I respond to that first? Okay, very valid and good point. Now you see, when it comes to the learning state, we are not going to, let's say, take any intervention. The learning states are not communicated to the teachers at real time. The behavioral states are, because behavioral states are going to be detrimental for the classroom environment and also for the students. Okay? Because, for example, when someone is reaching a meltdown, or if you can identify that they are reaching meltdown, that is something which needs an intervention immediately. But well, you understand that well, certain material, from the teacher's perspective, I'm saying, you are creating certain materials, you see that the students are not engaging. Probably it is something for us as teachers need to think, what can we do differently to re-engage the students? Because it has got historical data, okay? Therefore, we can try to see that well, which kind of materials are engaging the students more. Okay? Therefore, for the learning states, we are not really sending any alerts to the teachers. Okay? It is more about the behavioral state where a real intervention is needed to support the students. Okay? Of course, the learning states further can be connected to the re-rendering of materials, re-representation of materials. Okay? And that is something which is going to be a personalized pathway. You have a system that detects that some student is not engaged. Why don't you just represent the information in a different way? Okay? So that is something which is not going to be handled by the teacher instantaneously, but that is something which can be fed into another system that will then do something to re-engage the student to the session.
Does the message actually not passing to the teacher real time, or maybe it is after sometimes?
Real time, the message will be there whenever the meltdown event, the behavior, about the behavioral state. For the learning state, no, we are not trying to, let's say, overburden the teacher with trying to check that which student is learning and what is
Can I just say, your questions are great questions, because these are the things we've been thinking about for a long time. So we're computer scientists, and we talk to psychologists who then will say, trying to reduce behavioral states to do with learning to 3 states is over-reductionist. You know, how can you possibly say there's only 3 states, engaged, bored, or frustrated? So this is very much a first step. But when we talk to teachers, we do talk to teachers they were saying it helps to build up a pattern over time for that particular student, what kind of activities work for that student. And if something doesn't work with a neurodiverse population, you have to try different approaches. You can be playing some kind of tutorial, doing something, some simulations, doing some real practical experience work as well. In your retinue of teaching interventions, you have to have lots of different activities to really engage students who have a wide range of learning needs and preferences. So it just helps you identify the students who perhaps are struggling to engage in your classroom, as much as said, not in real time, but over a period of time, and direct your scant teaching resources to some of the students in greatest need. But it's not to rush in that student isn't engaged, because who amongst us can be engaged all the time in economics? Sometimes you need a bit of time out from, I need a bit of rest, go for a walk. So this is just to identify perhaps the students who are really struggling consistently to engage in a classroom, using technology which is not high-end technology. We're not using, we're only using a webcam. You know, some of our students with autism, some of them, we have a big group of students we co-design with autism. Some of them love wearing smartwatches, some of them have extreme sensitivity about those kind of things. So can we just get most of the signals, as Shannon was saying as well, from interaction and video camera too.
So if you personalize the data, like that, if you use illustrator data for a particular student, then your model size will be increased and the data size also increased.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is something which is the idea that, well, then you will have a personalized model, as David was mentioning, for the student. Okay, so you can understand that what are the students' learning style, because we all have different learning styles. We learn in different ways. For example, as when you go to the classroom, for example, you know after a few days, first few days of the semester, if it is the new student which you have never taught before, after first few days you know that, well, this student, which kind of examples probably would be needed for that particular student. It is actually the same thing, that, well, how that student learns. I mean, does that student learn with certain kind of activities? You let's say, create some quizzes and let these students take some quizzes, and then the students learn in that particular way. You, let's say, give them some homeworks, the student learns through homeworks. How the students actually learn? What is the students' learning style?
So it would be better if you use an equipment model like that. Because if you use this thing, then your model size will be increased.
The model?
The model size will be increased, data will be increased over time, because you are using the personalized data. You are using the historical data for each and every student in particular.
But that's fine. That's fine. Well, right now, that is why we are having it in the cloud right now.
So,
is it possible to use an equipment data, equipment model?
Of course, initially your model will have to be pre-trained with something.
so it's trained on a general pod. We are trying to expand the
You can
training
also
set.
make it cost, because cloud, using cloud in this particular reason is very costly.
Okay, so can you have a local model that you download?
Yeah, well, I think that it is something which is not going to be a heavy model, okay? Because as we said that, well, we are not sending the videos. We are sending cloud points. Videos, I mean, an image and a cloud point, there is a huge difference. Okay, and most of the things are done, let's say, on using systems which are actually pre-trained. For example, we are using MediaPipe. MediaPipe is already something which is pre-trained and already well accepted in that particular case. Yeah.
Have any of the teachers got any concerns about using tools like this, which look at students' interactions and even facial features to understand if they're engaged? Because I know we have many conversations in my country, in the UK, where some teachers have real concerns.
So if you consider there are three situations in case of reading, browsing and writing also.
Yeah.
This system is capable to calculate data in case of reading and browsing.
Well,
But if you consider writing case, how can you can calculate data from eye pattern or eye gaze like that?
That is where the interaction comes. You know that, well, we are trying to understand that what is the typing speed. Well, we are not trying to see what you are typing, okay? But we are trying to see that, well, whether the student is typing in a consistent way or not. Okay? Of course, there could be some pauses in between, but again, when it restarts, it is not like something like that, or one by one by one. So usually, you know that well, there is a range that we want to see, and that is why, you know that well, there is the initial data collection that happens during the first few minutes of the session about the student.
In Europe, there's now the AI Act, which prohibits the use of emotional recognition systems in schools and the workplace too, which is quite interesting. So we're developing these systems for students who have a range of challenges in learning, but in Europe, in the European Union, which Britain isn't currently part of, they actually are barred in schools. Research is allowed, but they think that there's too many, perhaps, issues around the use of that type of AI technology in classroom, which might expose students to biases. If the model is trained on a neurotypical population, do I need this? Trained on a neurotypical population and then used on a group of people with, say, autism or special needs, whether the model doesn't really particularly represent their data. On our European project that we did a couple of years ago, we did actually train our models on people with severe learning disabilities and autism. But it still is a concern. So the use of AI in classrooms has huge potential, but huge challenges too. And so we always encourage all the teachers we work with to have a really informed debate about what are some of the potential opportunities in a country like Bangladesh for using some of these models. And it's great that you're mentioning just issues to do with using these models on the cloud. Are they lightweight enough? Will they work with the resources that exist within the kind of educational centers in Bangladesh? So everything we're doing with the teams here at BUET and Jahangir Nagar University are trying to develop systems which run exactly on the kind of equipment we find here, in the resource settings we find here, specifically tuned to the needs of your educational establishment. And that's really why we want all of you within this consortium to be thinking about some of the challenges and opportunities of using AI, but using AI ethically and for good, whilst being mindful of some of the challenges too. It's a great opportunity, which doesn't mean we should wholesalely go for AI. We have to use it ethically and for good, but recognizing there's a great opportunity here. And I always say in education, AI should never replace a teacher. It's to augment their practice. If you've got a classroom of 30 people, how can you possibly attend to everybody's needs? But if you've got a monitoring tool to say a certain student is consistently disengaged, it might give you some additional information to say, well, how can I then direct some of my scant resources to helping that student with other types of activities, games or interactive simulations or group activities, something like that. It's always to be mindful of the opportunities and risks, and that we're doing this in an ethical manner. But everything we're developing here for this project really should be tuned for Bangladesh. And that's why we need your help and partnership to do that. Any other questions for the team? My one question is to the team, just before coffee, because I know you're desperate for coffee, is where next with this tool?
How close to market are we?
Say,
Not market, how close to real employment?
Yeah.
Over to Sham.
how close are your team to deploy in the toolkit? So is this tool actually usable in the toolkit at the moment?
I mean, we are working on that because collecting information so that we can retrain the model with our local information.
So one of the questions I thought you were asking before is if you're working with a huge range of students of different abilities and you've got a model which is changed generally, would you have something like a local model which could learn augmented knowledge of a wide population about that particular student? How might you do that?
Yeah, well, I think that
It's like one of your exam questions.
I think that, well, in this particular context, and there will be opportunities to use technologies like federated learning.
Yeah.
You know, and that is something which we can allow. And I think that this is a great opportunity. You know that, well, most of the AI models that we have are right now biased because of the data that they are trained on. Okay, and the majority of them are having only a specific population. But well, if you would like to increase the generalizability of these models, in the future, I think that the best would be to move on to federated training of those specific models. For example, having those certain models which are trained on the South Asian population, while certain other models are trained on the West. So that, well, because we are seeing that increasingly in the West there is a quite good representation of these South Asian populations. You know, well, that is why
In some places.
yes.
Yeah.
That is why probably, well, it is something which is very relevant. For example, in certain parts of London, if you go, the schools have got, for example, 90% of the pupils are from, let's say, South Asia. In this particular cases, I think that, well, it's very interesting. Federated learning is
And that's exactly what Zaki is doing as well. Okay.
Is this system is for offline and online both?
Yes.
For that case, how to recognize the students without the image based on the data points?
We are not aiming to recognize the student. That is the whole point. We do not want the students will just have certain IDs or something. Okay?
But in offline classroom, there is only CCTV camera, otherwise no other devices to identify the images.
That's a very good point. But right now it is, well, if you are, sorry, I probably misunderstood your question. So in offline means that where there is no
Physically present student in a classroom, a number of students gathering there.
Multi-object detection.
Yeah, that is something which we have not yet worked on. Yeah, that is the natural next step actually. Yeah. So we have been discussing about that for a number of times. You know, that how can we actually use other existing infrastructure, for example, the webcam, sorry, not the webcam, the CCTV camera, possibly to identify the students' engagement. But that's yet another challenge. And it is an open research question in computer science, in computer vision, to detect, let's say, multiple people's presence in a classroom, in any environment, and then identify or track their movements to identify their behavior, let's say. So that is still an open question. We haven't been able to.
It's a great point you're making, that, you know, if you're in a situation which is not completely online or mostly offline, there are a number of resources on the toolkit that you can go to and print off and use for inclusive education as well. In the database, I don't know if we're going to have a look at the database after, if at all we have a look, but there's, we didn't even look at this yesterday, there's a huge database on the toolkit, which is huge amounts of inclusive education activities, tools, resources, and mostly they're open source and free to use. And I know there's some for offline games that if you have a printer you can print out, and there's lots of materials and resources that can be used offline, like in the real world, wherever that is. Yeah, but it's a really good point. And it is a good point that we do have this huge database of resources that we haven't really had a chance to show you as yet. And these contain loads of resources and information and guidelines that you can all use for free, usually, and open source. Especially it looks towards huge amounts of assistive technology. There's a huge European database, huge European database, and it's got loads of assistive technology, screen readers and text-to-speech, speech-to-text, that you can use all for free. We don't have to continually reinvent the wheel. And perhaps we'll have a quick look at it, just show you where the database is, and you can look at it yourself. There are huge amounts of resources there that can be used for free in terms of assistive technology. Because some assistive technology, I know in the UK, can be incredibly expensive. So what we're trying to do is just pinpoint and make sure everyone knows where the free stuff is as well, because there's a lot of free stuff out there too.
So the whole point is the Diversity toolkit that we have shown on the Diversity website, okay? We invite you all to really take a closer look. There are lots of stuff in there, okay? And that is something which contains, as David was mentioning, the different types of databases. For example, one database very quickly that I showed on the other day was the Eastern database about assistive technologies. For example, which kind of technologies are there. There are many information about the best practices in certain aspects, okay? That what, where, how things are handled. We probably do not know that if something happens, how should we actually do in that particular situation? And those kind of information are available in that particular toolkit as well. Would you like to just very quickly point them out where those relevant information are? Do you want to log in from here, or do you want to connect your one?
So whenever it's not a copy,
Yeah, you can
just
connect
want
your one
to
if you
know
need to.
where the link to the tool, to the databases are for you to look at yourself.
So I was just looking at your hand-ins from yesterday there. So on the e-learning site, we have these two general resources here. This one, the first one here, is the Diverse Asia Best Practices. So these are best practices collected by the Partnership for the Diverse Asia Project. It's a collection of good practices and analysis of data. So I'll read this. As part of the project, all partners collected good practices in order to cover the whole field. The work focused on 3 target groups, 3 levels. The collection of good practices and analysis of data allowed us to look at existing experiences in different countries in relation to all target groups and at all levels, with a particular focus on the international level. A total of 333 good practices were collected in various languages. Although some are not in English, most of them are. So this is here, and so by default it's just the full list of so it's just the full list of best practices with a summary. If you go to this magnifying glass icon, you can then get details of each of these best practices. So this one, the first one here, is about UNESCO Institute for Information Technologies in Education. So that's the UNESCO one. If I just go back, so maybe we do a search on something. Let's search for dyslexia. So I'm searching for dyslexia. It's a bit counterintuitive. It says save settings here. You save the settings and that saves the search. And there we've got 8 out of 341 records there. So we've got the first one here, University of Vienna, alternative modes of assessment at the University of Vienna. If we have a quick look at that. So here we've got a description of the particular practice and a link to the actual resource here. Hopefully this is in English. We'll see when we get there. 9. We can make it English though, can't we?
But of course, well, Google can translate that.
Yes, yeah. But so if we go back to another one, so going back. Yeah, so this one's an Indian applications of assistive tools and technologies in enhancing learning and abilities of dyslexic children. So if we have a quick look at that, we go in here and there's a brief summary of what this is about. Author enumerates the various types of assistive tools and technologies that are helpful to dyslexic students who are having learning disabilities, and these technologies include computer programs, tablet applications that provide text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and so on. And we can go and have a look at this PDF in this case, and there's a PDF explaining about that. So these are a variety of different resources, different formats, different kind of practices. Some are more practical, some are more theoretical. But this was collected in the Diverse Asia project itself. Also alongside this, we have the second one, which is the European Inclusive Learning Hub. So this is a more European focused collection of practices. I think there are about 250 in this one, and this is it says a large repository of inclusive, searchable and usable learning resources, methods, tools and mechanisms already tested, approved and deployed in certain countries. So if we go into that, it's a similar kind of way to search. You can search on a keyword. Let's do blind this time. Save the settings. And this has come up with 12 out of 226 records. First one is that's kind of Spanish, yeah, but it's in English. And if we have a look at that, that gives us overall objectives, objectively verifiable indicators of achievement. So this is quite a practical description of what was done with this project, and I'm hoping that there's going to be a web link at the end. No web link for that one. Okay. So there are 500 or 600 case studies of best practices, approaches that have been used just with it collected on two projects. And then to go back to the Eastin database, which I think is off the main site, isn't it? The Eastin database, Mufti, can you help me? Where was it?
Best practices in Europe and in Asia for inclusive education. There are resources, guidelines, toolkits as well. So do you have a look through those? Because there might be resources that you think I can immediately use in my school, in my university, in my training centre. And most of them are open source and free to use. You don't have to pay for any of these. So just search, find the keywords relevant to your context and see if anything's useful to you. The next one, this database is freely available assistive technology like screen readers or magnifiers, again, which mostly are free and open source to use.
So this is the Eastin database. This is a massive database of all of the commercially and nationally produced products around, I think it's around the world, not just Europe, isn't it? So here if we search for dyslexia again, see what we get. So product groups: magnifier glasses, lenses, and lens systems for magnification. And we've got two manufacturers: Tastor Till Orblind and Orblind Tastor Inc. So maybe dyslexia wasn't the best one to search for there. So that looks like a keyboard. Let's go for something a little more blind. Okay, yep. So there are 75 results returned for this.
And this was a big European project where the European Union gave money to a consortium that our friend was involved with, just to bring together all the assistive technology resources into one place.
This categorises sort of things on the ISO, with the ISO disability classifications. So this is ISO 223.339.05. So that's tactile displays for output devices. It's a bit more
Technical.
technical, but yes, it's mostly assisted products that are out there. So it's a huge database which you need to know what you're looking for a little bit to explore.
The important point is there's, on the toolkit, there's links to 2 sets of inclusive learning practices containing 500 projects with guidelines and resources. Then there's the Eastern database where you can search for assistive technology. So if you've got a person with low vision in your classroom or hearing impairment, search to the Eastern database and just see if there's any technology, assistive technology, you can download for free as a starting point before you go to start spending money or your resources that you need to be careful about. Have a look here first.
And on the website it does explain a bit more how it all works. So you search by name, and these are the different ISO categories that you can pull up
Sure. And that's
from
a lot
it.
to take in, but you know where the links are, they're available at the top level. Please do have a look. And please now.
And of course, over this 1 year that we are going to work on this particular project, you people being a part of this first workshop are kind of connected to the network. Now we have the WhatsApp group. Please feel free to ask any questions, okay? Anything that you may have, okay? So let's try to develop these best practices. Maybe something that you think probably will go on to this particular website as well. Something that you might introduce within your institution. So that is absolutely what we are expecting and looking forward to.
Okay, well
Yeah.
served coffee break now.
And I'll just say that what we're planning on doing is reworking this website a bit so that
So that it becomes more
things are more
yeah.
user friendly and more apparent. At the moment it's a bit, some things are a little bit
Okay.
obscure.
So we have a coffee break now?